It was a hot summer afternoon in a small desert town, the kind of place where life moved slower and everyone knew each other's business. The roar of Harley engines echoed down Main Street, sending shivers through the air. A group of outlaw bikers rolled into town, their leather jackets adorned with skulls and patches that screamed rebellion. They were a menacing sight, big, bearded, and oozing intimidation. The locals avoided eye contact, shutting doors and pulling down blinds as the gang parked outside the only bar in town. Inside the dimly lit bar, a tall, well-dressed man sat quietly in the corner, nursing a glass of water. He was African American, clean-shaven, and had the kind of posture that commanded respect without effort. But he was an outsider, and that alone was enough to draw attention in a town like this. What the bikers didn't know, though, was that this man wasn't just any outsider. He was Agent Marcus Hayes, a seasoned FBI operative who had spent years taking down criminal organizations. He was in town undercover, investigating a lead about the gang's involvement in drug trafficking and illegal arms deals. The gang stormed into the bar, their laughter and crude jokes filling the space like toxic smoke. They ordered drinks, slapped money on the counter, and quickly noticed Marcus sitting alone. He didn't flinch under their gazes, but he also didn't engage. That's when the leader of the gang, a towering brute with a patch that read Crusher, sauntered over. "What's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" Crusher sneered, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. The bar fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus looked up calmly. "Just passing through. Don't want any trouble." Crusher grinned, his gold tooth glinting in the dim light. "Trouble's already here, pal. You sitting there like you own the place. You think you're better than us?" Marcus didn't rise to the bait. "Just having a drink. That's all." But Crusher wasn't the type to let things slide. "You hear that, boys? He's just having a drink." The gang laughed, their voices harsh and mocking. Then, without warning, Crusher's hand shot out and slapped Marcus across the face. The sound echoed like a gunshot, and everyone in the bar froze. Marcus didn't react immediately. He stayed seated, his expression unreadable, his hands slowly wiping the corner of his mouth. The bikers roared with laughter, slapping each other on the back like they'd just won some great victory. But Marcus wasn't laughing. "All right," he said softly, standing up. His towering frame suddenly seemed even larger, his presence more imposing than any of the bikers had anticipated. He looked Crusher in the eye, his voice calm but deadly. "You've made your move. Now, it's my turn." Before anyone could blink, Marcus struck. His movements were precise, almost surgical. A swift punch to Crusher's gut doubled him over, and a lightning-fast uppercut sent him crashing to the floor. The other bikers surged forward, but Marcus was a blur of motion. Years of FBI training had honed him into a weapon, and these guys, for all their bravado, were no match. One by one, they went down. A biker swung a pool cue, but Marcus caught it mid-air, snapping it in half before delivering a spinning kick that sent the man sprawling. Another lunged with a broken bottle, but Marcus sidestepped, using the man's momentum against him and slamming him into the bar. In less than 5 minutes, the bar was a scene of chaos. The once feared gang lay groaning on the floor, their bravado shattered. Marcus stood in the middle of it all, breathing steadily, not a single bead of sweat on his brow. The bartender, who had been cowering behind the counter, peeked over the edge, his eyes wide. Who the hell are you?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out his FBI badge and tossing it onto the bar. "Agent Hayes," he said simply. "And these guys, they're under arrest." With that, he calmly pulled out his phone and called for backup. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance as local law enforcement arrived to round up the battered bikers. Marcus watched as they were handcuffed and loaded into patrol cars, their reign of terror brought to an abrupt and humiliating end. As the last car pulled away, the bartender stepped forward, still shaken. "Thank you," he stammered. "I didn't think anyone could stand up to them." Marcus nodded, slipping his badge back into his pocket. "Just doing my job," he said, walking out into the afternoon sun. The roar of a single motorcycle echoed behind him as he disappeared down the road, leaving the town a little quieter, a little safer, and with a story that would be told for years to come. The quiet returned to the small town, but the air remained charged with the aftermath of what had just happened. The locals, who had been peering nervously from windows and half-closed doors, slowly stepped outside, murmuring to one another as they surveyed the wreckage of the bar. Inside, the bartender began sweeping up broken glass and shattered pride. He couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind, the calm, calculated precision of Agent Hayes. He wasn't just a man, he was a force, and the thought sent chills down his spine. Marcus, meanwhile, was a mile down the road, parked under a lone tree that offered little shade. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Agent Hayes," he answered. "Hayes, this is Director Sloan," came the voice on the other end. "We got the report from the local PD. You handled yourself, effectively. But you know how this works. Biker gangs don't take this kind of loss lightly. We've got word they're calling reinforcements some of their top enforcers from the neighboring states. They won't let this go." Marcus stared at the horizon, unshaken. "I figured. Let them come." "Hayes, don't get cocky," Sloan warned. "This isn't just about you. Civilians could get caught in the crossfire. Stay sharp, and we're sending backup." Marcus hung up without a word. He wasn't one to wait around for reinforcements. The desert was quiet now, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Gangs like these operated on loyalty and vengeance, they'd be coming, and they wouldn't come alone. Night fell, and the bar's neon sign flickered like a weak heartbeat. Locals who usually gathered for a drink stayed home, too afraid of what might happen next. But the bartender stayed open, mostly because he didn't have much of a choice. Bills didn't pay themselves, and besides, he figured the worst was over. He was wrong. Around midnight, the low growl of engines returned louder this time, more numerous. The bartender's heart sank as he saw headlights appearing on the horizon, one after another, like a string of angry stars descending on the town. A convoy of motorcycles rolled in, their riders clad in leather and vengeance. These weren't the same men from earlier. They were bigger, meaner, and looked like they'd been pulled straight out of a nightmare. The leader, a scar-faced man with icy blue eyes and a patch that read Reaper, dismounted first. He scanned the town like a predator sizing up its prey. "Where's the guy who put my brothers in cuffs?" he growled, his voice carrying through the empty streets. The bartender ducked behind the counter, his hands trembling. He reached for his phone to call the police, but before he could dial, the door creaked open, and Reaper stepped inside. "You hiding him in here, old man?" Reaper snarled, his boots echoing against the wooden floor. He didn't wait for an answer. With a single swing, he knocked over a table, shattering glasses and spilling what was left of the night's peace. But before Reaper could do more damage, a shadow appeared in the doorway. "Looking for me?" Marcus said, his voice calm and cutting through the tension like a blade. Reaper turned, his eyes narrowing. "You must be Hayes. Heard a lot about you in the last few hours. Took down my men like they were amateurs. Let's see how you handle the real thing." Marcus stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "I've dealt with worse." Reaper smirked and nodded to his men outside. They poured in, one by one, filling the bar with a dozen bikers, each armed with chains, knives, and bad intentions. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he cracked his neck and shifted his weight, loosening up like he was preparing for a workout. "Last chance," Marcus said evenly. "Walk away." Reaper laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about walking away. This is about respect. And I'm about to make sure no one disrespects the Reapers again." The fight was inevitable. The first biker lunged at Marcus, swinging a chain, but Marcus caught it mid-air, using it to yank the man forward and deliver a brutal elbow to his face. Another came at him with a knife, but Marcus sidestepped, twisting the man's arm until the blade clattered to the floor. The bar erupted into chaos. Chairs flew, bottles shattered, and fists collided with flesh. Marcus moved like a whirlwind, his training evident in every strike, every block, every takedown. He used the environment to his advantage, slamming one biker's head into the jukebox, flipping another over the bar counter, and sending a third crashing through the window. Reaper watched from the sidelines, his smirk fading into something darker. He realized too late that Marcus wasn't just another lawman. This was personal for him, though Reaper couldn't yet understand why. When the dust settled, the bar was in ruins, and the bikers who had once been so full of bravado were now groaning on the floor, their weapons scattered uselessly around them. Marcus stood in the center, blood on his knuckles but not his own, his breathing steady. Reaper, the last man standing, reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. "You're good," he admitted, leveling the weapon at Marcus. "But no one's faster than a bullet." Marcus didn't move, his eyes locked on Reaper's. "You sure about that?" The sound of sirens cut through the night. Reaper's eyes flicked toward the window, just for a split second, but it was all Marcus needed. He moved, disarming Reaper with a brutal twist of his wrist and pinning him to the floor in one fluid motion. "You've got a choice," Marcus said, his voice low and menacing. "You tell your men to back off, or this ends right here, right now." Reaper, gasping for air, nodded weakly. All right. Stand down," he yelled to the bikers who were still conscious. Moments later, police cars surrounded the bar, and officers stormed in, cuffing the bikers one by one. Marcus handed Reaper over, his expression unreadable as he watched the leader of the gang get hauled away. As the chaos died down, the bartender stepped out from behind the counter, his hands still shaking. You saved us again," he stammered. "Why do you do it?" Marcus glanced at the shattered bar, then at the horizon where dawn was beginning to break. "Because someone has to," he said simply before walking out into the early morning light, leaving behind a town that would never forget the name Marcus Hayes.